Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of Beer Rating with Sean Connors. For those following me on Facebook, actually the name of the Facebook group, it's the same thing, Beer Rating with Sean Connors. I posted a picture about a week ago. It was a friend of mine, I believe he was in Arizona, and it was just the beer menu of a bar he was into, but they had some really good beers there, interesting names. Well, anyway, I asked my friend if I could post it on my picture. He said, yeah, no problem. Then he sent me a private message, said, hey, I didn't know you were doing this at all, blah, blah, blah. And Mike travels a lot, so he said, I dropped by the house. He said, I got a couple beers from my last trip. So I'm not one to turn down beers, especially when it comes to beers that I've never had before. So I dropped by today thinking, okay, I'm going to grab a couple beers that he got from his trip. I believe it was Arizona, could be in Utah, down that way anyways. So I get there to his house and he says, come down the basement, I got something to show you. So I go down there and he has a beer closet, or I think he called it a beer locker, basically a little tiny closet, and he had it full of all these beers from his travel. It was unbelievable. So he ended up setting me up with, I think, 12 different beers. I mean, I got everything from barley wine, to sours, to IPAs, porters, everything. Beers I've never even heard of. So needless to say, I was ecstatic. So to start off, I just want to give a big shout out to Mike Pretty for that. I mean, I got 12 beers there. So next 12 weeks or so, that's going to be it. I also have one I've already had, Quebec beer, so I'll throw that in there some way. So the next 12 beers, thanks Mike, glad to have you on board, and appreciate all the beers. So this is the first one from the 12 that Mike gave me. This is Petrus Rood Bruin. Now, my understanding is this is a fairly new name for, well, it's probably a couple years old now. The original name was Petrus Rood Bruin, which is old brown, and the new name is Rood Bruin, which is red brown. So there you go. So I'll read the Petrus. I actually did one or two of these beers before. I think they're well known in Belgium for their sour beers. I mean, they do all sorts of different blends of sours. And this one is actually a blend of their aged pale, which they call their mother sour, and young brown. So the Page Ale, that's their mother beers. Any blends that they do with sours, I think that's the base that they use. So this one, I'll just read a little bit about it. 5.5% alcohol. A lot of it's in either Dutch or Belgium would be Dutch, German, or French. So there is a little bit on the back. It says, Petrus Rood Bruin is a blend of 33% Petrus aged pale, pure fodder beer, and fodder beer basically means it's aged in a large wooden barrel, a huge one, like size of a room type of thing. It has been aged for 2 years in oak fodders, and 67% young brown beer. In this blend, the young dark beer contributes to the reddish brown color, and the aged pale contributes to a slightly sour flavor. Petrus Rood Bruin is a typical Flemish red ale as tradition dictates. So there you go. So 5.5% alcohol, traditional Flemish red-brown beer. And from what I read today, they were saying, different areas of Belgium, they have their regional beers, and this is one of the regional beers for the Flemish area. So it's a blended sour. It's a cut beer or blended beer. My understanding, originally, beers were blended or cut together. It helped to extend the shelf life of the beer. For this one, they say the aroma, you're going to get candied fruit and figs, possibly hints of cherry and peach, also possibly malt, butter, and caramel. And for the flavor, they say slightly sour. Let's pour it up and see what we got. Okay, I give my glass a quick cold water rinse, as per usual. And I'm using a tulip glass, and this is typical a glass used for Belgian beers. It's used for other beers as well, but typically for Belgian beers. And they say the stem is so you're not warming the beer with your hand. And they say just the shape of it, it traps the head, which in turn traps the aroma. Alright, so let's pour it up. There you go. It's pretty brown. I was expecting more of a red tinge to it. It's definitely dark color. It's definitely brown. Definitely getting a bit of a fruity aroma. Nice head to it. And once again, the head is a little brown to it. I just want to put a light to it just to see if I'm going to get any redness. me, it's more brown than red. The aroma has slightly changed. I'm actually getting a little bit more, almost like the sourness. It might be cherry that I'm smelling. For the flavor, the big test. Slightly sour, I get that. It's not overwhelming. Being a blended sour, that's to be expected. It's got a maltiness to it. Not a bad beer by any means. The brewery for this one is, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Debrabandere, Debrabandere. And it's a family brewery, I think since 1894, I think they're on their 5th generation. They started off, it was a farm brewery starting off, and obviously it took off well. They're doing this full time. And as I said, it's known around the, up around the Flemish area of Belgium, which I believe the Flemish area would be up around the French border. And one area they said it was Kortrijk. I'm probably not pronouncing that right either. And if anybody here from Newfoundland, the Newfoundland Regiment, World War I, they did battles all over Europe, and their main battle sites, there's actually Caribou, which was the emblem for the regiment. There's actually Caribou monuments. I think there's 4. There's one here in Newfoundland, just as a memorial. There's 4 in France and 1 in Belgium, and the one in Belgium is in Kortrijk. Mike, my friend, he's actually head of the, I'll make sure I get this right, Trail of the Caribou Research Group. So he's a bit of a historian. If you want to know anything about Newfoundland Regiment, he's the one to talk to, one of the many to talk to. Wait, Mike's on the ball there. All right. It's not a bad beer. I'm actually getting the sourness, well, like I said, it's not overwhelming. I find I'm picking up the sour aroma more than I am the taste. I'm definitely enjoying it. I have to give it a rating, and once again, my ratings are out of 5. 1 being a drain pour means I don't like it, can't finish it, I'm pouring it out. A 2 being, yeah, I'm not a big fan, but I won't waste it, so I'll drink it. A 3 being a good beer, a 4 being a very good beer, and the 5 being the best beer I've ever had. And this beer right now, I'm thinking 3.5. I'm not totally convinced on that yet. It's definitely unique. It's one of those ones, if you've never had a sour beer and you're reluctant to try it, this would be probably one of the ones that would be a good starter for you. I'm going to give this one, I'm going to say a 3.5, which puts it in between a good beer and a very good beer. So it's definitely not a bad beer. It's definitely one to try. You might find these, obviously these are an import, I'm here in Canada. At times I've gone to the liquor store, I've seen a couple Petrus, other times I can't find them all. So it's one of those ones that if you see it there and you want to try it, pick it up when you see it. Now obviously if you're in Europe everywhere, you're going to find, or especially Belgium, you'll probably find it everywhere. I'd love to try it on tap, because for me, you know, even though I enjoy a beer, I always find it's always better on tap. So there you go, I think I'm going to stick with my 3.5 for the Petrus Rood Bruin. And once again, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it's the red-brown, once known as the Oud Bruin or the Old Brown. So there you go, folks. Hopefully you can join me next week, and we'll tackle another one of the 12 that I got from Mike. Until next beer, as always, enjoy responsibly, and cheers.